Ravensbruck concentration camp is located in northeast Germany. It's about a 1.5 hour drive from Berlin and about an hour's drive north of Sachsenhausen, which is a concentration camp in this area. In this aerial view, you can see the main part of the camp here. And that's where we'll be spending most of our time. But you can also see how the camp had portions that extended out here and over here. You can also see the remains of two rail lines. This one that comes into camp was primarily used for transporting goods and services. The other line, which continued this direction and then wrapped around the other side of this lake, arrived at a train station. And from there, many of the prisoners would then walk about 40 minutes to get over to the camp's entrance. Here we've zoomed in to the main area of the camps that visitors usually explore. The parking lot is here. There's an information building right here. And then this large building is the former SS headquarters building, and that's where we'll go to start our tour. So from the parking lot, we come to the former SS headquarters building, which is right here. The camp commandant and administrative offices were located here. Today, the building houses the camp's exhibition center, which we'll go to now. This is inside the building's entrance. It says the Ravensbruck Women's Concentration Camp, History and Memory. In this case are several figurines made out of plaster. They were made by camp survivor Inja Gulbrandsen, who was a member of the Norwegian resistance. She spent 2 years at Ravensbrück. She made these figurines in 1994, which are recreations of some of the atrocities she witnessed. So in this one, you can see a woman carrying a corpse, and here a woman caring for either a person who has already passed or is near death. Here, women holding their arms up, an SS guard, and their dog. On this one, it's kind of hard to see from this angle, but these women are pulling a cement roller, and one of the women has fallen, and one of the SS guard's dogs is coming at her. Medical experiments on women at Ravensbrück were often brutal and sadistic. One type consisted of sulfonamide experiments. A sign in the museum reads, "Under the supervision of Karl Gebhardt, the use of sulfonamides to treat gas gangrene was tested on Ravensbrück prisoners from July 1942. Many soldiers died of wounds infected with this disease during World War II. Gebhardt's researchers deliberately infected prisoners with gas gangrene by wounding them and contaminating the wounds with soil, splinters of wood, glass, or pus. The SS doctors then tested various sulfonamide drugs on the prisoners. A few prisoners in a control group did not receive any treatment. These extremely painful experiments were carried on the victims until October 1943. Similar experiments took place in the Dachau concentration camp at the same time. Another form of experiments consisted of operations on bone and muscle. Before we get to this sign, to the right is a box and an ampule of Evapan natrium. Natrium is the Latin word for sodium. This is a type of narcotic that was used in some procedures, but if given rapidly in high doses, is fatal. The emblem on the box may look familiar. It's the same symbol you'll find today on a bottle of Bayer aspirin. On the sign, it states, the team of doctors led by Karl Gebhardt carried out military surgical experiments to research the regeneration of bone and muscle tissue. At least 25 female Ravensbruck prisoners were forced to undergo these operations between 1942 and the autumn of 1943. The SS doctors shattered their bones and removed sections of bone and muscle, which were then transplanted. The surgeons were looking for ways to treat German Army and Waffen-SS soldiers with bone and muscle injuries caused by explosions. The women who were operated on suffered lifelong disabilities as a result. Here are a couple of photos of the results of these muscle operations. The information card and photos are on display in the museum. The information card reads, clandestine photos of the victims of medical experiments. 4 Polish women managed to take these photos while they were still in the camp to document how they had been mutilated. The camera had been smuggled from Warsaw to Ravensbruck on a prisoner transport. The film was carefully hidden for months before finally being smuggled out of the camp by the French prisoner Germaine Thion when she was evacuated. You can see here on her thigh the scars that were left, and here on this woman's calf. Sterilization experiments were done in Block 10 at Auschwitz and were also done at Ravensbrück. This sign reads, the gynecology professor Karl Klauberg was looking for a fast and cheap method for mass sterilization. People considered inferior in the Nazi racial ideology were to be prevented from reproducing, but still remain available for slave labor. Klauberg first experimented on Jewish prisoners in Auschwitz by order of Himmler. In 1944-1945, the sterilization experiments were continued at Ravensbrück on Roma and Sinti prisoners. Klauberg's methods did not require an operation. Instead, he injected a caustic liquid into the fallopian tubes of women and girls, which led to severe inflammation and subsequent infertility by permanently sealing off the tubes. According to estimates by former prisoners, at least 160 Roma and Sinti women were forced to undergo this agonizing procedure in Ravensbrück, including girls under 10 years of age. Several of them died as a result of the procedure. In this room is an example of the 3-tiered bunks used at Ravensbrück. In this display case are a pair of socks. The caption reads, "Sabotage socks." Many older women were put to work in the knitting workshops of the SS-owned textile plant. They were forced to knit socks for German soldiers, among other things. Some women deliberately made the heels too narrow or defective in other ways so that the soldiers would get blisters on their feet. So on this map, the red stars are where we have been, and the yellow stars are where we're going. So from the former SS headquarters building, we'll go to the location of this star, and we'll take a look at the buildings behind it, which served as houses for SS guards. And then we'll go up on this hill where there are two houses, which were for high-ranking SS officers. From there, we'll go through the camp's main gate and down to this building, which was known as the camp prison. So here we can see the former SS headquarters building that we were just in. If we turn around 180 degrees, we can see the buildings that served as the living quarters for the SS guards. Something unique to Ravensbruck is that all of the guards were female. Now we are on top of the hill, which has the remains of two houses that high-ranking SS officers and their families lived in. The one to the right is open to visitors, and we'll go in there next. In the photo in the upper right is the living room as we come through the front door. To the left is the staircase leading upstairs, and the photo on the bottom right is of the master bedroom. To the left is a view from the upstairs balcony, and you can see the former SS headquarters building to the far left. To the right is a view from the front yard of the house, and you can again see the former SS headquarters, and to the left of it, the camp guard station and main entrance. Here we are at the location of the guardhouse and main entrance. Prior to this outer wall being built, the original camp gate would have been located here. A few years later, this outer gate was built. Prisoners would pass through the main gates, while Nazi guards and personnel would go through this door to the right. From here, we'll pass through the gate and turn right, making our way to the camp prison. The billboard outside the camp prison reads, "The camp prison or cell building, which the prisoners also referred to as the bunker, was an integral part of the camp's internal penal system and the site of acts of particular cruelty. The building contained 78 cells. When the memorial was founded in 1959, the cell building held its first exhibition. The permanent exhibition entitled Ravensbruck, the cell building, was opened in 2006 and places the camp prison in its historical context." In the middle photo, you can see prisoner cells that line the walls, both upstairs and downstairs. And it has a similar appearance to what a cell block would look like in present-day prisons. The photos on either side are of sculptures that are on display in some of the individual cells. From the camp prison, we'll follow this path, making our way down to the far end of camp. This area was known as the industrial area, where textile factories and tailors' workshops were. We'll then see this grassy area, which was where the men's camp was, and from there we'll backtrack down this main path that runs down the middle of the camp. As you glance around in this aerial photo, you can see these long rectangular areas. and these are where barracks once stood. So here we've just exited the camp prison. The buildings in the distance are part of the industrial complex, and all of this open space would have been filled with barracks. So now we'll start to make our way over to the far left. On this billboard, we can see how the camp once looked. Here in the foreground is the SS headquarters building, and you can see the main path that runs down the middle of the camp, and you can also see how it's lined with prisoner barracks on either side. So again, at this far end is where the industrial area was, and prisoners had work duties. All of this open area would have been filled with barracks. Next, we'll move over here to this grassy area. As we make our way over to the grassy area, you can see depressions in the ground indicating where barracks once stood. This is one of two long buildings where the camp laundry and shower block were located. When I walked behind the building, I found something unexpected. I was surprised to find a pumpkin patch. Here's a view from the far end of camp. You can see the camp prison here, the camp's main entrance over here, and this long building that had the pumpkin patch behind it. Now we'll turn around and enter the workshops in the industrial area. These are some views from inside the workshops. This slide shows a sampling of some of the sculptures on display in the warehouses. In the upper left is a cart used by prisoners. The emaciated sculpted figures in the lower left were at one time displayed outdoors. They were created by artist Stuart Wolff. On the next slide, we'll take a closer look at one of them. Each of the figures has a stake that pierces through the heart and are represented with different colored triangles. This one has a pink triangle, which was the color designated for homosexuals. I think the sculpture's dramatic effect can be best visualized in the side view. In the upper right is a cement roller that prisoners had to pull and was used to smooth paths and roadways. A guard tower is seen to the left, and part of the original camp wall is seen in the lower right. This empty field is all that remains of the former men's camp. The billboard reads, "Between 1941 and 1945, around 20,000 men were imprisoned in the men's camp. It was also under the authority of the women's camp's commandant. The SS set up the men's camp to provide them with male slave laborers for the ongoing expansion of the Ravensbruck camp and its satellite camps." The marker to the left shows where Barrack 11 used to be. At one time, Barrack 11 was used to house Jews. Later, it was used as one of the sickbay wards. The marker to the right shows where Barrack 10 used to be, which was the tuberculosis ward. Women in this barrack typically died soon after arriving or were selected for extermination. This marker is for the main camp street that ran down the middle of the camp with barracks on either side. Per the camp brochure, the trees that line the street are lime trees that have grown from seedlings. On the next slide, we'll take a 360-degree view of the camp from the middle of the main street. Now we'll visit this region of the camp. We'll start with the burdened woman sculpture, then along the Wall of Nations, a burial site, the crematorium, an execution site, and then ending at a memorial wall. Near the edge of the water is a sculpture entitled Burdened Woman. It was created in 1959. The small building ahead with the chimney is the crematorium. The sign outside of it I've enlarged. It reads, in the spring of 1943, the SS had a crematorium for the camp erected outside the camp walls. It was expanded in the autumn of 1944. Around the same time, the SS started construction work on a provisional gas chamber. In 2012, during restoration, a large amount of human ashes were found in the underground area. Since then, the courtyard has become a dignified grave, marked by stones. The burial ground is now covered in a bed of roses. One of the plaques along the bed states, location of the gas chamber, December 1944 to spring 1945. Behind it is the Wall of Nations, which lists countries from which prisoners at Ravensbruck were from. These are some additional memorial sculptures located near the crematorium. A couple of notable Ravensbruck survivors with last names you may recognize are Catherine Dior and Geneviève de Gaulle. Catherine Dior was a member of the French Resistance. Her brother was designer Christian Dior. Some of Catherine's story was featured in the 2024 series, The New Look, which ran on Apple TV. Geneviève de Gaulle was also a member of the French Resistance and later became an advocate for human rights. Her uncle was Charles de Gaulle, who later became president of France. And if you ever take a trip into Paris by air, you'll likely fly into Charles de Gaulle Airport. These photos are inside the crematorium. Another view from outside the crematorium. Next, we'll visit a memorial site near this wall. Near that wall is a memorial stone that reads, "The Firing Range." Here, hundreds of women and girls were murdered by the SS by being shot in the back of the neck. As we conclude this presentation, I feel one of the best ways to honor the women of Ravensbruck can be found in this quote by Anna Zigas on a memorial wall, which reads, "They are mothers and sisters to all of us. You could neither learn nor play freely today. Yes, you might not have even been born if such women had not placed their delicate, frail bodies like steel shields in front of you and your children throughout the entire period of fascist terror."